My father-in-law sent strangers with knives to take my boy after I filed for divorce. My name is Zaria. Today I'm going to tell you my story. But before I continue, please like, share, and subscribe to hear more stories like this. When I married Cameron 7 years ago, I thought I'd hit the jackpot. He was charming, successful, from a wealthy family. His father, Victor Ashford, was a federal judge, respected, powerful, connected. His mother, Genevieve, was old money elegant, the kind of woman who wore pearls to breakfast and spoke in perfectly measured sentences. They seemed to adore me at first. Finally, someone worthy of our son, Victor said at our engagement party, raising his champagne glass. Welcome to the Ashford family, Zaria. I should have paid attention to that word, worthy. Like I was an acquisition that met specifications, not a person they were welcoming with open arms. The first year was perfect. Cameron was attentive, romantic, everything I'd dreamed of since I was a little girl watching romantic comedies. When I got pregnant with Kai, the Ashfords were ecstatic. A grandson to carry on the family name. Magnificent, Victor beamed, placing his hand on my stomach without asking. He'll have the best of everything. Or she, I corrected gently, smiling. It's a boy, he stated with such certainty, it felt like a decree. The Ashford line always produces boys first. He was right. Kai was born perfect and beautiful, with Cameron's dark hair and my brown eyes. That's when everything changed. You're holding him wrong, Genevieve criticized within hours of delivery, swooping in before I'd even had time to process becoming a mother. Support his head more firmly. The nurses showed me. Provincial hospital staff, please, she interrupted, waving her hand dismissively. We've arranged for a proper nanny. We don't need a nanny, Cameron said, but his voice was weak, lacking conviction. Already, I was seeing how his parents' influence worked, like invisible strings attached to every decision he made. Don't be ridiculous, Victor cut in, his judge's voice brooking no argument. Ashford children have always had nannies. It's been arranged. And it was. Suddenly, our home, the beautiful townhouse in Georgetown that Cameron's parents had helped us purchase, was full of staff. His parents hired a nanny, a housekeeper, even a private chef. My protests were dismissed as new mother nerves or postpartum anxiety. Let them help, Cameron urged when I tried to talk to him about it. It's what my parents do. They throw money at everything. But it wasn't help. It was control, wrapped in expensive paper and tied with silk ribbons. The nanny, a stern woman named Mrs. Whitmore, reported to Genevieve, not me. My parenting decisions were overruled before I even finished making them. My mother-in-law would sweep in unannounced, rearrange everything from Kai's schedule to the nursery furniture, and sweep out, leaving instructions with the staff. Kai needs structure, she'd declare, implementing feeding schedules and sleep training methods I hadn't approved. Ashford children are raised with discipline and order. The staff situation became unbearable. I'd find Mrs. Whitmore teaching Kai to call Genevieve grandmama in that formal, reverent tone, while I was just mommy, casual, almost dismissive. The chef, Pierre, refused to make the organic baby food I'd researched and carefully selected, following Genevieve's menu instead. Madame Ashford prefers traditional preparations, he'd say, as if my preferences didn't matter in my own home. The housekeeper, a quiet woman named Gloria, would rearrange my personal items, and I later discovered she was reporting back to my mother-in-law about everything, from what books I was reading to how long I spent on phone calls with my own mother back in Atlanta. This is surveillance, not help, I told Cameron one night after finding Gloria photographing my medicine cabinet. You're being paranoid, he said, not even looking up from his laptop. They're professionals. Professionals who report to your mother. I found Mrs. Whitmore taking photos of Kai's room to send to Genevieve. So? Mom likes updates about her grandson. That was the problem. In Cameron's mind, his parents' behavior was normal because he'd grown up swimming in it, staff everywhere, privacy invaded constantly, control masquerading as care and concern. The marriage crumbled slowly, like a building with a compromised foundation. You don't notice the cracks at first, but one day you look up and realize the whole structure is tilting dangerously. Cameron traveled constantly for the law firm, Victor's law firm, Sterling and Ashford, where he was being groomed for senior partnership. When he was home, he was different. Colder. More like his father. The warmth I'd fallen in love with had frozen over. "You're being dramatic," he'd say when I complained about his parents' interference. "They're just helping. They're taking over. I'm Kai's mother, and I can barely make a decision without Genevieve swooping in. They've raised successful children. Maybe you should listen instead of fighting everything." The loneliness was crushing. I was surrounded by staff, living in a beautiful home, wearing expensive clothes, but utterly alone. My own family lived across the country in Atlanta. My friends gradually stopped coming by after Genevieve made it clear they weren't welcome. "Your friend Brittany seems rather loud," she'd observe with that tight smile. "Not the best influence around Kai. Children absorb everything, you know." When Kai turned 3, I found out about Cameron's affair. It was a classic story, the junior associate at his firm, 25 and ambitious. Late nights at the office. Business trips that weren't really business. Hotel receipts in his jacket pocket. I confronted him, expecting denial, guilt, apologies. Instead, he shrugged. "It doesn't mean anything, Zaria. You've let yourself go since Kai was born." "Let myself go?" My voice cracked. "I'm raising our son practically alone while I work to provide this lifestyle," he interrupted. "Dad's right. You've gotten too comfortable." "Your dad? What does Victor have to do with our marriage?" Cameron's smile was cold, nothing like the man I'd married. "Everything. He made me see reality. You were good for producing an heir, but the Ashford men need more, stimulating partners." The words hit like ice water. "He encouraged you to cheat?" "He introduced me to Vanessa. Said she understood the arrangement better than you ever would." The betrayal was double-edged, my husband and his father conspiring against me like I was a problem to be managed, not a person with feelings. That night, after Cameron left for another business dinner, I fired all the staff. Every single one of them. "You can't just dismiss them," Cameron protested when he came home to an empty house. "Watch me. This is still my house too. Not for long if you keep this up." That threat hung in the air between us. The next morning, I called a divorce lawyer. Catherine Reeves came highly recommended, tough, experienced, a bulldog in the courtroom who wasn't intimidated by powerful families or their expensive lawyers. "The Ashfords," she said at our first meeting in her downtown office, her expression sharpening with recognition. "This won't be easy. Victor has connections everywhere, judges, prosecutors, police chiefs. He's been building that network for 30 years. I just want shared custody and enough support to raise Kai properly." "Reasonable," she nodded, "but I doubt they'll see it that way. In their world, you're the help who got above her station. Document everything from this point forward." I started keeping meticulous records. Every text message. Every threatening comment. Every time Genevieve showed up unannounced. Every sign of Cameron's neglect of Kai. I bought a small notebook and filled it with dates, times, witnesses. I thought I was prepared. I thought I understood what I was up against. Then I filed for divorce, and Victor went nuclear. "You ungrateful little nothing," he snarled, appearing at my door the same day Cameron was served with papers. I'd never seen him lose his composure before, and it was terrifying, like watching a mask slip off to reveal something ugly underneath. "You think you can break up this family? Your son broke up this family when he cheated. When you helped him cheat. Boys will be boys," he said, as if infidelity was just another sport. "You should have worked harder to keep him interested. Get off my property." He leaned in close, and I could smell his expensive cologne, see the rage in his eyes despite his judge's controlled demeanor. "You have no idea who you're dealing with, Zaria. I've destroyed stronger people than you. Walk away now. Leave Kai with his real family, and I'll let you go unscathed." "His real family? I'm his mother. You're an incubator who got above her station. Last warning." I slammed the door in his face, hands shaking so badly I could barely turn the lock. That night, I installed security cameras around the entire house, front door, back door, driveway, every angle I could cover. The legal harassment started immediately. Motions filed almost daily. Custody evaluations demanded. False CPS reports claiming I was unstable, neglectful, even abusive. Each one was baseless, but each one required time, money, and emotional energy to fight. They're trying to break you financially and emotionally, Catherine explained after the third emergency hearing in 2 weeks. Standard Ashford tactics. Victor's been doing this to people for years. Cameron moved back to his parents' estate in McLean, showing zero interest in seeing Kai. But Victor wanted his grandson, not to raise with love, but to own. Another Ashford asset to control. Things escalated when the court granted me temporary primary custody. The judge, thankfully not one of Victor's golf buddies, saw through their tactics. Mr. Ashford hasn't seen his son in 2 months, she noted, looking at Cameron over her reading glasses. The mother has been the primary caregiver throughout the child's life. Temporary custody to Mrs. Ashford with supervised visitation for the father. Victor's face turned purple. I watched him grip the table so hard his knuckles went white. As we left the courthouse, he grabbed my arm in the parking garage, his fingers digging in hard enough to bruise. "You've made a fatal error," he hissed. "I offered you mercy. Now you'll learn what happens when you cross the Ashford family." "Is that a threat? In front of witnesses?" I glanced at Catherine, who was already recording on her phone. He released me, his expression smoothing into that judicial calm. "Just a promise." The next weeks were hell. Dead rats left on my doorstep. All 4 tires slashed in the grocery store parking lot. Anonymous calls at all hours, sometimes breathing, sometimes threats whispered in distorted voices. The security cameras caught figures in dark clothing and ski masks, but never clear faces. "File police reports every time," Catherine advised. "Build the pattern." But the police seemed strangely uninterested. Probably teenagers, they'd say, barely looking at the evidence. Bored kids from the neighborhood. Victor's reach was longer than I'd thought. He'd spent 30 years cultivating relationships with law enforcement, trading favors, making himself indispensable. Who was going to believe his son's ex-wife over a respected federal judge? Then came that night. Thursday, 2 a.m. Kai had been having nightmares all week. He could sense the tension, the fear I tried to hide. I'd finally gotten him settled, reading him Where the Wild Things Are for the 3rd time until his breathing evened out. I just crawled into my own bed when I heard it, the back door splintering, wood cracking, the sound of forced entry. My heart stopped, then started again, pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. I grabbed my phone with one hand and the aluminum baseball bat I'd started keeping by the bed with the other. My fingers shook as I dialed. 911, what's your emergency? Someone's breaking into my house, I whispered. 1847, Maple Street. Please hurry. I have a child. Ma'am, stay calm. Officers are being dispatched. The bedroom door burst open. That's when my neighbor's floodlights suddenly blazed on, bright as stadium lights. Mike, a Marine veteran with insomnia, had heard the commotion. His voice boomed through the night. Police are coming. I called them too. Get out of there. He appeared in my doorway with his own baseball bat, and I'd never been so grateful to see another human being in my life. The men looked at each other, calculating odds that had suddenly shifted. They'd expected easy prey, a frightened single mother. They hadn't expected a fight, witnesses, complications. They ran, leaving blood and one of the knives behind in their panic. I collapsed against Kai's door, my arm on fire, blood soaking through my nightshirt. Baby, it's okay. The bad men are gone. Mommy hurt. His voice was so small, so scared. I'm okay, sweetheart. I'm okay. Stay in there until the police come, all right? Okay, Mommy. Mike was already on his phone. Ambulance is coming. Let me see that arm. This time, the police took it seriously. They couldn't dismiss the blood, the broken door, Mike's witness testimony, the abandoned knives. This was attempted kidnapping, home invasion, assault. At the hospital getting stitched up, 17 stitches running from my elbow to my wrist, I told Detective Morrison everything. He was older, experienced, with kind eyes that had seen too much. Richard Ashford hired them. They said so. He's trying to take my son. That's a serious accusation against a federal judge. Check their phones when you catch them. Check their bank records. He hired thugs off the internet to kidnap my child. Catherine arrived as the doctor was wrapping my arm in clean white bandages. I filed emergency protection orders. And Zaria. She was smiling, and I hadn't seen her smile once in 3 months. Those men were arrested 20 minutes ago. Traffic stop 2 miles from here. And you're right, they're talking. It turned out criminals hired off Craigslist aren't particularly loyal when facing serious charges. They immediately flipped on Victor, providing text messages, payment records through Venmo and Cash App, even a recording of him giving instructions. Make it look like she's unstable, Victor's voice commanded on the recording the detective played for me later. Take the boy. Bring him to the estate. If she fights, do what's necessary to subdue her. Do what's necessary. That could have meant my death, right there in front of my son. The FBI got involved. Federal judges orchestrating kidnappings fall under their jurisdiction. Victor was arrested at his country club, in the middle of his standing Thursday lunch with the Virginia Bar Association. This is a misunderstanding, he shouted as they cuffed him in front of everyone. I'm a federal judge. Not anymore, the agent replied. Genevieve tried damage control, appearing on my doorstep 2 days later with tears and a checkbook, wearing black like she was already in mourning. Please, Zaria, this has all gotten out of hand. Tell them it's a mistake. We can work this out privately. I'll write you a check right now, name your price. Your husband sent knife-wielding criminals after my 4-year-old. He was desperate. You were keeping his grandson away. I was protecting Kai from your toxic family. Now get out before I call the police on you too. Her tears dried instantly, like turning off a faucet. You don't understand what you're doing. The Ashford name means something in this city. You're destroying a legacy. Good. Your legacy is built on control and abuse. She left, but not before throwing one last barb. You'll regret this. When Kai grows up without his family's resources and connections, when doors that should open stay closed, you'll remember this conversation. He'll thank me for keeping him safe from people who see him as property. Cameron finally showed his true colors during the emergency custody hearing that followed Victor's arrest. With his father facing federal charges, he tried to play the victim. I had no idea what my father planned, he testified, his voice trembling with practiced sincerity. I'm horrified. I just want to be a good father to Kai. Where have you been for the last 6 months? My lawyer asked. Working. Providing for my son. How many times have you attempted to see Kai during these proceedings? Silence. Then, well, with all the tension. The answer is 0 times, Mr. Ashford. But now, after your father's arrest, you want custody. The judge saw through it. Mr. Ashford, your absence speaks volumes. Your father is facing serious federal charges for attempting to kidnap your son, a plan that involved violence against both mother and child. Full custody to Mrs. Ashford. Supervised visitation only if and when you demonstrate genuine interest in your son's welfare, not your family's control. Victor's trial was a media circus. A federal judge hiring thugs to kidnap his grandson? The press devoured it. His carefully built reputation crumbled on national television. But what made it worse for him was what happened during the trial. More victims came forward. Other families Victor had intimidated over the years, using his position to destroy anyone who crossed him or didn't bow to his power. He ruined my custody case, one woman testified. Made sure his friend from law school got my children even though their father was abusive. He had my business audited repeatedly by the IRS when I refused to sell to his golf partner, a man shared, his voice shaking with remembered fear. The pattern was clear. Victor Ashford had been abusing his power for decades. The kidnapping attempt was just the culmination of his belief that he was untouchable, that he could do anything. He was convicted on multiple charges: conspiracy to kidnap, solicitation of violence, witness intimidation, abuse of power. The mighty Victor Ashford was sentenced to 12 years in federal prison. At sentencing, he stared at me with such pure hatred I felt it like heat across the courtroom. You've destroyed the Ashford legacy, he said. The judge let me respond. I stood up, my arm still bandaged, and looked him in the eye. No, you did that yourself when you chose control over love, violence over law. You did this. The Ashford empire collapsed fast after that. Victor's judicial rulings came under review. His law firm, desperate to distance themselves from the scandal, removed his name from the letterhead. Society friends vanished like smoke. Genevieve, unable to cope with the shame of her husband's public disgrace, fled to their house in the south of France. Cameron lost his job when the firm purged all Ashford connections. His girlfriend Vanessa left him when the money stopped flowing. He spiraled into drinking and gambling, burning through his trust fund within a year. "Please," he begged during one pathetic phone call 6 months later. "I need to see my son. I have nothing left." You never wanted Kai. You wanted the Ashford heir. There's a difference. I'm his father. Biologically. But Mike next door has been more of a father, teaching him to ride a bike, coming to his preschool plays. You know, things fathers actually do. I hung up. Some bridges, once burned, can't be rebuilt. The man who cut my arm got 8 years. His partner got 6. They both seemed almost relieved during sentencing. Apparently, Victor had threatened their families if they failed or talked. Even criminals were victims of Ashford intimidation. We moved after the trial, starting fresh in Charleston, South Carolina. I wanted Kai to grow up away from Washington, away from the Ashford shadow. My arm healed, leaving a scar I see as a badge of honor now. Proof of what a mother will do to protect her child. Catherine helped me legally change our names. We're not Ashfords anymore. We chose my grandmother's maiden name, Bennett. A connection to love, not legacy. Kai's in 2nd grade now, thriving. He plays soccer and collects rocks and tells elaborate stories about dinosaurs. He doesn't remember that terrifying night clearly, thank God for childhood's merciful amnesia. He knows there were bad people who tried to hurt us and Mommy kept him safe. "You're brave, Mommy," he tells me sometimes, tracing the scar on my arm with his small finger. "Mommies are brave for their babies," I tell him. Always. He doesn't know his grandfather is in prison or that his father drinks himself to sleep most nights in a studio apartment in Arlington. Someday when he's older, I'll tell him the truth. For now, he's just a happy 7-year-old who loves life. Sometimes I get updates through the legal grapevine. Victor apparently runs a jailhouse law clinic, still convinced of his superiority even in prison. Genevieve sends letters from France that I return unopened. Cameron has made a few half-hearted attempts at rehabilitation, always quitting when it gets hard. But the most satisfying update came last year. The Ashford estate, that monument to their pride, was foreclosed on and sold at auction. It's an event venue now, hosting weddings and corporate retreats. Something Victor would have considered beneath his status. I took Kai there for a fall festival, watching him run through what used to be Victor's pristine gardens, now filled with pumpkins and hay bales. "This place is fun," Kai declared, getting apple cider on the marble floors. "The best," I agreed. People sometimes ask if I regret marrying Cameron, bringing Kai into such a toxic legacy. But without Cameron, I wouldn't have my son. And Kai isn't an Ashford. He's kind, humble, considerate, everything they weren't. The attack taught me something valuable. When powerful people threaten your child, believe them. Victor told me exactly what he was capable of. I just didn't think a federal judge would actually do it. But desperation and entitlement are a dangerous combination. The Ashfords believed they owned people. Cameron owned me. Victor owned Kai. When I shattered that delusion, they turned vicious. But here's the thing about fighting back, it works. Yes, I have a scar. Yes, we had to rebuild our lives from scratch. But my son is safe, happy, and free. The Ashfords are destroyed by their own choices. And somewhere in federal prison, Victor knows that the nothing he tried to crush ended his empire. Mike still sends Christmas cards. He included a photo last year of his own grandkids playing with Kai during a visit to Charleston. "Real family," he wrote, "is about protection, not possession." He's right. The Ashfords had wealth, power, connections. But when it mattered, I had something more powerful, a mother's love and neighbors who stepped up. That's what real family looks like. Last month, I got a call from a woman in Richmond whose ex-husband was displaying similar controlling behavior, escalating toward violence. She'd heard my story through a domestic violence support network. I spent hours on the phone with her, sharing resources, validating her fears, helping her make a safety plan. "He's a partner at a major firm," she said, echoing my own past doubts. "People won't believe me." Document everything. Trust your instincts. And remember, his reputation isn't worth your life or your children's safety. She got out safely. Her ex is now facing charges. Another powerful man learning that money and connections can't override justice forever. That's become part of my healing, helping others escape similar situations. I speak at domestic violence shelters now, sharing my story, showing my scar, proving that survival is possible even against the most powerful abusers. Because that's what the victors of the world don't understand. They think fear makes them powerful. But love, a mother's love, a community's love, the love that makes us fight impossible odds, that's real power. And it always wins in the end.